My name is Jennifer Chen, and this is the story of how I learned that sometimes the quietest person in the room holds all the power. For 15 years, I worked behind the scenes at Chen Global Solutions, the tech company my brother Michael and I inherited from our father. While Michael became the charismatic face of the company, I was the one who quietly built our empire from the shadows. But sometimes, it's only in the shadows that you can see people's true colors. I still remember when it all began, when our company was nothing more than a small tech consultancy run out of a converted warehouse in Silicon Valley. My father had built it from scratch, teaching himself to code while working 3 jobs to support us after we immigrated from Taiwan. Michael was always the golden child, charming, outgoing, destined for greatness. I was the quiet one, the girl who spent her weekends learning to program instead of going to parties. When our father passed away 5 years ago, he left us equal shares in the company. Take care of each other, he'd said in his final days. Together, you can build something extraordinary. What he didn't know was that I was already building it, a revolution in cybersecurity that would eventually turn our small firm into a billion-dollar enterprise. The trouble started 3 years ago when Michael met Victoria at a tech conference. She was everything I wasn't: tall, elegant, with an MBA from Stanford, and a resume studded with all the right companies. Within 6 months, they were married. Within a year, she had convinced Michael she should join the company. Vicky has incredible experience in financial management, Jen, Michael had said, his eyes shining with excitement. We need someone like her to help us scale. I nodded and swallowed my objections. What Michael didn't know was that I had already secured a series of funding rounds through my own connections. Our growth strategy was already well on its way. Victoria started as a financial consultant, but her ambitions were clear from day one. She inserted herself into executive meetings, offered opinions on everything from marketing to product development, and slowly began stacking leadership positions with her friends from business school. I watched it all unfold silently from my office, focusing on our technology and client relationships. To her, I wasn't a founder or an innovator. I was just Michael's quiet sister. The tension between us simmered quietly until the night of the party, the moment everything changed. Victoria had just been appointed CFO, a role she had lobbied for relentlessly. To celebrate, she threw a lavish party at the Four Seasons, inviting the elite of Silicon Valley, venture capitalists, tech reporters, influencers, everyone who could help cement her status as a rising star. I arrived early, wearing a simple black dress, chosen for its understated elegance. Victoria was holding court in a designer gown that cost more than some people's annual salary. As I approached to congratulate her, she turned to a friend from Stanford and said, just loud enough for everyone nearby to hear, "Why is the waitress here? This is an executive party." The room didn't fall silent. Silicon Valley parties never do, but I felt the ripple of embarrassed glances. Michael stood nearby, clearly uncomfortable, but he said nothing. His silence cut deeper than her words. Victoria's chin lifted. "Oh, I'm so sorry. I forgot you were Michael's sister. It's just that you're always hiding away in that back room. I hardly ever see you at important company events," she said with a light laugh. though I suppose someone has to handle the technical details. I stood there, absorbing every condescending word. Years of being underestimated, dismissed, and pushed aside crystallized into one sharp, painful moment. But I didn't cry. I didn't cause a scene. I smiled, raised my champagne flute, and said, "Congratulations on your new role, Victoria. I'm sure tomorrow will be very interesting." She barely acknowledged me, already turning back to her admirers. Michael caught my eye, but I just shook my head and left early. I had work to do. That night, back in my office, I opened my laptop and pulled up the documents I had hoped I would never have to use. The truth was, Victoria had never bothered to look into the company's ownership structure. 3 years ago, when we needed capital, Michael had sold me 17% of his shares to avoid bringing in outside investors. He'd been so eager to impress Victoria that he signed the papers without reading the fine print. I now owned 67% of Chen Global Solutions. I worked through the night, emailing board members, calling our legal counsel, and preparing announcements. As the sun rose over Silicon Valley, I felt a mixture of sadness and resolve. My father told us to take care of each other, but sometimes taking care of the company means making the hard decisions. The next morning, I arrived at the boardroom early. At 9 a.m. sharp, Victoria swept in with a triumphant smile, clutching her CFO orientation papers. That smile froze when she saw me sitting at the head of the table, flanked by the other board members, video conference, our legal counsel, and a pale-looking Michael. "Jennifer, what are you doing here?" she demanded. "I have my CFO orientation meeting." "Actually, Victoria," I said calmly, "we need to discuss some changes to the company's structure." Her composure faltered. "What changes?" I opened my laptop and projected the document onto the main screen. "As of this morning, I am exercising my rights as the majority shareholder of Chen Global Solutions to implement an organizational restructuring." "Majority shareholder?" She let out a weak laugh. "That's ridiculous. Michael and I control 67%. "I own 67%, I interrupted quietly. "Would you like to see the paperwork?" I displayed the ownership breakdown. Her face twisted with disbelief, then anger, then fear. "This can't be right," she snarled, turning to Michael. "Tell her this isn't right." Michael looked like he had aged 10 years overnight. "It's true," he said softly. "I sold Jen some of my shares. I never thought—" "Never thought what?" Victoria snapped. "That your little mouse of a sister would actually use her power?" I held up a hand. "This isn't a challenge, Victoria. It's a correction." I turned to the board members. "As you've seen in the documents I forwarded, there have been some concerning financial decisions in recent months. The hiring of unqualified personnel at inflated salaries, the reallocation of R&D funds to marketing, and the attempted sale of our core patents to a competitor." The room was silent. For the first time, all eyes were not on Victoria. They were on me, the quietest person in the room, the one with all the power. Victoria's face went white. "How did you know about the patent sale?" "I built our security systems, Victoria," I said simply. "Did you really think I wouldn't have protocols in place to monitor any attempt to access our intellectual property?" One of the board members cleared his throat. "Ms. Chen, Jennifer, we've reviewed the documentation you provided. The board supports your proposed restructuring." I nodded my thanks, then turned back to Victoria. "Your position as CFO is terminated, effective immediately. Security will escort you out. I pressed a button on my phone, and two security guards entered the room. You can't do this. Victoria's composure finally shattered. She spun toward my brother. Michael, are you going to let her destroy everything we've built? Everything we've built? I rose slowly to my feet. Victoria, while you were planning parties and giving interviews about being a woman in tech, I was the one building this company's future. That security system you tried to sell, I developed it. Those major clients you bragged about landing, I brought them in. The technical details you so casually dismissed, they're worth billions. Victoria turned to Michael, desperate. Do something. My brother looked between us, and for a brief moment, I saw the boy who used to defend me on the playground. But this wasn't a playground, and we weren't children anymore. I'm sorry, Vicky, Michael said softly. Jen's right. We lost sight of what this company is really about. As the security guards led Victoria away, her threats echoing down the hall, I felt no satisfaction. This wasn't revenge, it was protection. Protecting our father's legacy, our company's future, and even Michael from his own blind spots. The next few weeks were a blur of change. I restructured the executive team, bringing back talented people Victoria had pushed aside. We refocused on technology development. And when we announced our new security patents, our stock price soared. Michael and I had long, late-night conversations in the conference room we once shared with Dad. I forgot who you really are, Michael admitted one evening. Somewhere along the way, I started seeing you through Victoria's eyes instead of my own. We both forgot, I replied. We forgot that family means being honest with each other, even when it's hard. 3 months later, an envelope arrived from Victoria's lawyer. Divorce papers for Michael, along with a demand for a hefty settlement. Michael signed them without hesitation. You know, he said, putting down the pen, Dad always said you were the smart one. I smiled. Dad said we were both smart, just in different ways. He was right. We just had to remember how to work together. A year has passed since the night Victoria dismissed me as the waitress. Chen Global Solutions has tripled in value. Our security system is becoming the industry standard. Michael and I have found our rhythm again. He handles public relations while I drive innovation. Last week, I delivered the keynote speech at a major tech conference. Standing at the podium, looking out at a sea of faces, I thought about all the quiet people, the ones behind the scenes, so often underestimated and overlooked. Success isn't about being the loudest person in the room, I told them. It's about being the most observant, the most prepared, and sometimes, yes, the quietest. Because true power isn't found in titles or corner offices. It's found in knowing your worth and standing your ground when it matters most. As for Victoria, last I heard, she was working at a small startup, still telling anyone who'll listen how she once served as CFO of Chen Global Solutions. Sometimes I see her quoted in articles about women in tech, and I can't help but smile. She still doesn't understand that leadership isn't about the title you hold. It's about the value you create. I keep my father's picture on my desk. His kind eyes remind me of his last words, take care of each other. And in the end, that's exactly what I did. I took care of our company, our legacy, and yes, even my brother. Sometimes, taking care of someone means making the hard choices. But as long as you stay true to your principles, you'll never lose your way. The waitress, it turns out, knew exactly what she was doing all along.